Ra te potonga na runga potai e waka maunga tu no te wiki reira I te wā e tama e ngaro tangata na kara mai tēnei ka koke I te wenua ka witi e pā e ke ka uri tua ia na iwi marike na tau nai ora o kiri o te maka tēnā kariro o I te ropu au e taka I te rangi nei tauri mai ho matanga wai e re I roto Waitara ko te wai tēnā I tuku ai o ai toki kiri rau e roto Mataora nui nā kui miri o kia pai atu koe te aere ki rarora ma o tupuna koe po iri mai nau mai e tama tata ki konui kia piki atu koe I te rangi tuatai I te rangi tuarua kei reira te ora ka ua e tama I tuku atu koe kia whakatauri ngā mai o tawiti kia o ki tu mai ki runga ki hoiwi ki roto Waitara ki a koe I te nui ati a Waitara I rua nui
E tuhi rā koe uenuku I te rangi a newa newa ka matawhero ko tau toru ko tāore te whetū taki a te kopuanga te tohu o te tau. Te kairuri o te tau, te kai aru aru I a matariki ka rewa atu ki te rangi. Tā kiri te ata ura, te ata ai ai, te ata kā ura, kao, te pō takina te pō ki tua. E tūpuanga I te tahi o pipiri huaina tō whare ku maru ao nui. Ki no o mai koe ki runga o rarotonga nā te ka huiua, nā nei hoake. Ka wehe te taururu, ka noho te takurua, ka noho te hōtoke, ka noho te anu, te mātau ki runga ki o iwi. Tēnā e takoto nei, tēnā e takoto nei. Ka airi nei ko ngā kōrero ki runga ki a koe Māui. Māui hi ake ko tō ika. Tō ika nui, tō ika roa, te ika roa Māui, e tūtangata kore ana I tēnei rā. Oe anō, ka riro atu koe I ngā hau o te rangi. Te rōpū hau, ka riro atu, ka tāwhiri atu ki te taumata o te rangi. Ka pungarehu atu koe I te mate. Kua hi pā atu te iwa te kautau, neke atu, e whakatata atu ana ki te wā, tō wairua e rere ana ki runga I te rangi. Nō reire I tēnei rangi, ia tātou e piritahi ana ki runga I te ipurangi, kārite nei tātou, e rere nei ki runga ki te taumata o te rangi, ki tēnei anō kia piri ngātahi atu ki a puanga. Kia rewa atu ki te taumata ki rātou katoa mene atu ki tua. Ka pau te tau, ka pau te roimata, te hupe, e haerere tonu ana ko te mihi te tangi atu ki rātou katoa mene atu ki tua. Kia tāia I te ki, kia haere ki te Hawaii ki tanga o ngā mātua, kia haere ki runga I tērā I te kāinga tūturu o tāua te tangata. Nō reira Māui, Māu anō tō mai nei ngā mate, oroto o Taranaki, puta atu ki te motu, ngā uri o Taranaki, ka tau mai ki tō aru I te rangi nei. Māu anō e whakakapi tēnei āhuatanga o te hunga mate ki roto o Taranaki. Ti mata atu ki runga I te pūrepo, rere ki te tekau mā waru ki te tekau mā iwa, no tēnei rangi, no tēnei rā te mutunga rā o te marama, ka riro atu I a koe tēnei, te whakaaro nui ki rātou katoa, no reira ka waiho atu, te hunga mate ki te hunga mate, ko te hunga ora ki te hunga ora, I te mea ko tō kaupapa, ko te tangata ora. E tiaki nei te hunga ora i runga anō i tēnei uruta e rere ana ki runga i te tangata. Nō reira ka ata tiakina tēnei o tikanga, o ture, o ritenga, kia mana ki nei a manawa ora, a hau ora, ki wainga anō i tō tini. I pākia nei ki te muru me te raupatu, ka puta anō ki tērā. Engari anō e nei mauiwi o nā ia nei rangi, tēnei mā o tikanga e arataki o iwi. Nō reira Māui e ora tonu ana i roto i enei whakatupuranga. Ko o tikanga, ko o whakaro e iri tonu ana ki te tā Uruora te ikaroa Māui. Ko tō teko nei ka iri ki runga ki te whare, ko ia Māui tiki a taranga. Engari anō ka rite tahi nei ko tō teitei rā, ko te whakapakoko e mau nei o pungarehu ki runga o Waitara nui o Ngarue, tēnei e noho tonu ana. Kua hipa te tau, kāro atu ki te tau o muri nei, ko ia tēnei ka huitahi ana i tēnei rangi. Nō reira, ko te āhua ki ngā mate, kua maunu atu ki te pō, ka waiho ki haere. Engari anō ngā ronga rā, ngā rautaki, ngā whāinga, kei tēnā o koutou. Oi anō ko tēnei, ko te hua nui o Māui Pōmare, haere tonu, whakatutuki atu te wawata, kia ora tonu ngā tamariki ngā mokopuna i te apōpōtanga o tātou waka, o Aotea, o Tokomaru, o Kura Haupō i te rangi nei. Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Hakamate whiro e Tuuta keke, tānei te timu taina i tōtua. Tānei te tāurike taina i tōtua. Koi tai amingi koi ngā raratua tara koi waka kā tuki a koi waka kā wā ia koi waka rere. Kei runga nei te tehi pou, kei raro nei te tehi pou, pō ki tipua te tehi pō ki tawhito te tehi pō, ura manea ka taka te pō, hia, ka taka te pō. O mai manawa e tu e ho mai tō wairua ora. E ora ko tō manawa ko tāku manawa. Tēnei o ki tō manawa ka tīna, tēnei o ki tō manawa ka toka, tēnei o ki tō manawa ka poutaiki. Tīna noho tō manawa he ora. Ko tō manawa ko tōku manawa, he manawa ki mihia, he manawa ki rawea. Tuturu o uti waka maua kia tīna hui e tāki e. Pupu wha manawa o tama. Waka e manawa o tama ki te rangi. Rangi nui, rangi ro, rangi tāua. Tāua anuku, tāua rangi e tu e homai tō wairua ora, he ora. Awhi iho ki te papatua tai, awhi iho ki te papatua rua. Pupuru rā, raru rā, ki tā more nui no papa. He rongo, he ai o tēnā tāwhito pou kātu he tāwhito. Ko tāwhito i whea, ko tāwhito i tua, ko tāwhito i arangi e tū nei. E riri ana koe i wahora, e patu ana koe i wahora. Turakina i kona, ka hinga i kona, ka mate i kona. Ka mana uki te kōrero, ka matua uki te wānanga, ka matua uki arangi nui e tū nei, kai piri, kai tata, uki ki ahau e tū nei.
Ka tira hei waira i te ia o ngā kōrero, me te karakia, e tu e puanga i te tahi o pipiri, ka tahi a te pō, ka tahi a te marama, ka tahi a te tau, ara ko te tahinga hoki tēnei a puanga, ara ko te pua tauiwi o tautoru. E tu e matariki huaina tō ware ko te kawarau, kia noho mai koe i runga i te kawaura. E tu e te ui o matariki, ui ngā kōrero, ui ngā wānanga, ui ngā tāngata. No reira koutou rā te rā ngā ika o te tau ka ori, pū tere atu rā koutou ki tai pō, ki hinerua, ki pauri, e moi. Ka rāke nei te haiata me te tauhau ki runga i te tihi o tō tātou tupuna Taranaki. No reira tōia mai ngā tini kaupapa kia piri, tōia mai kia tata ki tō tātou rā mo tō tātou tupuna, a Māui e tūnei. Kia rāke ko te reo, kia rāke ko ngā tikanga, kia rāke ko ngā kōrero waiua, ko ngā kōrero waitake, kia haupū mai he nei kōrero manga ia rere, o te rangi e rere nei ki tō tātou pauware a te ikaroa Māui e tūnei, hei ware kōrero, hei ware wānanga, hei ware wakaruru au mō ngā waka e toru, a kura au pō a Aotea a Tokomaru. No reira, nau mai rā koutou kia piri, nau mai rā koutou kia tata, te tahi a puanga e tūnei, te huihuinga o matariki e tūnei, e hai. No reira, mihi ana kia koutou e te iwi, He tautoko no tēnei i ngā kupu arua kere, tāno te ara ki ngā karakiatanga kōrero a Rāwiri, ko te karakia tēnā hapurona, ko te karakia maungarongo. Nō reira, haramai rā koutou ki tēnei wānanga o tātou, me tō tātou rā mō tō tātou tupuna Māui. Nō reira, mihi ana ki tō tātou pauware, whare manaaki, a tama wahine, me te mōhua anō, kua moi ai ai tēnei wā, ana, kei te waka aungia, kei te hanga nei, te ware hou, hei ware manaaki mō tātou mō te iwi, nō reire mihi ana ki tō tātou ware. Koe anō, kei te tūtonu tēnei kaupapa a tā Māui, nō reira, ka rere nei ngā kōrero, ka rere nei te wānanga i tēnei ata, nō reire mihi ana ki a tātou. Kia ora everyone, and just acknowledging our mihi from Ruakere, acknowledging those of our whānau that have passed over the previous year. We acknowledge them today. We bring them into our kōrero, and also sort of acknowledging our karakia from Rāwiri. And today, whānau, we have carrying the theme of tā Māui, very much focused on te ora o te iwi, tēnei mea te hauora. And so we're really pleased to have a wonderful lineup of speakers this morning. And our first kaupapa is ka Uruora. And ka Uruora, for many of our whānau in Taranaki, is a kaupapa that was launched and led by Taranaki iwi in Te Atiawa. And it was really focused on how our iwi might better support our whānau through providing a number of services that are not normal services that have been provided by iwi entities in the past. And so we're really pleased to have Te Waka McLeod, one of our own, to present and kōrero about our kaupapa ka Uruora. Ka Uruora, of course, the name is taken from one of our classical karakia of Taranaki. Ka Uruora ngā tāngata, ka Uruora ngā wānanga, he uruora ki te wai au ki te ao marama. And the name acknowledges our connection to place, and this concept of how growth occurs within an uru, or a grove of trees, and the importance of these ancient old groves of trees in terms of, you know, they were revered and viewed as being leaders, but they also provided shelter and support within the forest, and we liken that to the role that leaders play in terms of supporting our younger generation. And so the symbol of ka Uruora and this particular idea has inspired a program of services that ka Uruora offers today. And so I'm really pleased to invite Te Waka, who will speak to us briefly this morning about our kaupapa ka Uruora. And following that, we have the current Tumu Whakahaere, Chief Executive Officer of the Maori Health Authority, Riana Manuel. So, hoi anō i tēnei wā, ka tuku nātu rā te rākau kōrero ki tō tātou tuahine kia Te Waka.
Tina rā tātou te tuata I me I kia koutou ngā wanaunga I tuku karakia I te atanei. Mi whai whakaro kia Māui Pōmare me ana mahi wanganui ngā whānau o Aotearoa. Ai tautoko ngā me I kia koe Jim, he uruora a ka Uruora. Kia ora tātou. So yes, it is my pleasure to be able to refresh us and talk about our kaupapa ka Uruora. As Jamie mentioned, it was set up for all whānau of Taranaki, and it has been a joy to be in amongst our whānau, being able to deliver financial workshops for our whānau. And again, this is for intergenerational wealth, intergenerational change around our finances. And I think when we look at health and oranga, this is something that we are embracing as te ao Māori, as Māori, and how we really manage our finances. And so I would just like to mention again that we've had about 140 whānau members through our financial literacy program, and some of the stories around our financial literacy programs are people, you know, it may seem simple, but cutting up credit cards, cutting up your, just cancelling your afterpays, your zip pays, so that there's a huarahi there to own your own whare. And so we've had a number of whānau move into whare in Taranaki, iwi, Opunake. We've got a couple more whānau moving into whare in Okatoa in the next few weeks. And for those of you who want to join any programs with Ka Uruora, please make sure you jump onto our website, kauruora.nz. It's open for all whānau to learn and understand what it is to save, get a better understanding around what it means to save for your whare, your future whare. And so I just like to invite all of our whānau to register for those courses. It's a fun, friendly course, and we have familiar faces running our courses. And at the moment, they're still on Zoom, so make sure you sign up. And also to speak to Whānau Saver. So Whānau Saver is similar to KiwiSaver. It's a savings scheme where you can invest money into a savings account. Depending on how many iwi you whakapapa to, they will then match dollar for dollar up to $100 per iwi. And so that's another opportunity for you to invest, and also for the iwi to invest in you individually as whānau members. It's the only contribution that goes to every whānau member that is within your whānau in that iwi. So that's something that we also work with. And we're here in Waitara now. We've set up office down on McLeod Street across from Binnen. So any of you that want to come and talk or have any kōrero or want to give to this kaupapa, feel free to come and talk to myself and Tanisha McDonald are there every day in the office. So no mahara mai. And yeah, give me a call, jump on Facebook. If you want to read or see anything on Facebook, jump on there and you'll be able to see videos of whānau. Watch the space for whānau that will be sharing their stories over the next couple of weeks. We've got videos coming out that will explain different whānau members' processes. So me ana kia koutou. Kia ora, Jamie.
Ka pai te waka. No reira, tēnā tātou e te whānau. So as te waka indicated, please visit the Ka Uruora website, and we encourage our whānau living both in Taranaki and those of our whānau living outside of Taranaki to look at how you might be able to join this kaupapa Ka Uruora, which is now supported across a number of our iwi of Taranaki. So he kaupapa nui tēnei, and it is in keeping with the legacy of tā Māui, because financial security and independence is really critical for our whānau, given some of the challenges that we face. And so taking those steps around financial planning and understanding some of the benefits of having a financial plan, and as Te Waka said, understanding debt and how we might change our behaviours and sort of habits is a really positive thing. And of course, the opportunities to be able to get into the habit of saving. Again, I know when I grew up at school, going down to the local post office was always a really wonderful thing to sort of deposit that $2. We had notes back then, and then seeing that bank balance sort of increase over time. No reira, e mihi ana ki a koe te waka me tēnei kaupapa whakahirahira. And before I hand it over to Ruakere to introduce our next speaker, as mentioned in our mihi, you'll see behind me we have our darling whare, our kuia tamawahine. And earlier in the year, of course, we put our whare tamawahine to sleep, and there was a ceremony acknowledging that before that took place. And so I just want to mihi to our house, our whare manaki, and I want to mihi to our trustees and sort of Rauri, ko koe te kanuhi o ngā tarati tēnei rā. And I just want to acknowledge Rauri and all of our other trustees of Owai Manukōrihi for their work. And I know, when thinking about our whare tamawahine, not always an easy decision, but she was challenged, and we're really looking forward to progress on the new build, and also acknowledging some of the other work on our marae. In terms of Ngarue, has had a facelift, and that house again is looking wonderful. The new roof on Tīkaroa, and Tamatane, so some really great work being done on our marae, and that's part of the reason, whānau, why we're having today's rā online, because we don't have the ability to be able to utilise our marae, but just acknowledging Rawiri and the other whānau at home at Waitara, who had karakia next to with Tā Māui this morning at our tiki, at the tiki kōhatu. Nō reira, mihi ana kia koutou Rawiri, i hāpai tunu nei i tō tātou kaupapa. Nō reira, tēnā koutou. Ka huri kia koe rua.
Tēnā koe Jamie, me rā kōrero. I nai nei ka rere atu te kōrero rā ki runga ki a koe Riana. Riana, nau mai ki roto o Taranaki, nau mai ki runga i a Waitara. Hara mai rā i roto i o iwi nei, Ngāti Pūkenga, Ngāti Maru, Ngāti Kahungunu, me o pāranga rā ki Tīkapa Moana. Nō reira, hara mai me te kaupapa o Māui Pōmare, arā ko te hauora i runga i te iwi. Riana, welcome to Waitara. Welcome from within the kaupapa of Māui Pōmare, te hauora o te iwi. And following on from kōrero, great kai kōrero in the past, there's been Mason Jury, Peni Henare, and i tēnei tau, ko koe. So I'd like to, in introducing you, I'd also like to acknowledge the way in which I think Te Ao Māori is awakening within this new space that has been created to be able to give substance to Mātauranga Māori, Wānanga Māori, Kura Māori, nō reira koia ko te hauora Māori. Just yesterday with the beginning of Matariki, and this day is like the opening of a new dawn, of a new sky, new stars to guide us. No, they're not so new, they've been there a while, but probably new to be able to be seen. And in many ways, those stars guide us today. They guide us in terms of ngā kaupapa o Matariki, kaupapa o Puanga, to acknowledge our mate, but also focus in on the year ahead. So Riana, welcome to Taranaki, welcome to Māui Pōmare, and the legacy that he is that has been maintained for him, but was established over many years within the time that he spent both in hospitals and working with our people and the hauora of our people, but also in Parliament, and the hauora extended right across the te muru me te raupatu, the reconciliation of these events of the past is all part of the hauora of o tō tātou iwi. Nō reira, Riana, nau mai, tēnā koe, kia koe te wā.
Tēnā koutou e te whānau, tuatahi ka tuatu tēnei mi ka koutou, e tona atu kia hau ki te haramai, ki te kōrero i roto i raro i te maru o tēnei kaupapa whakahirahira. Ai tika tonu, no pare hauraki a hau, engari ka tai atu te waka o Tainui, ki roto i te moana o tikapa, e tangi hotu taku ruruhi, i kitea ngā maunga e rua ko moihau, ko te aroha. Engari kei wainganui te whenua o hauraki, kei reira taku ūkai pō ko te awa o manaia. E hara i te manaia no Taranaki, engari ko te manaia ki roto i te rohe o hauraki. I tipu ake au ki te taha o tōku marae o manaia, e rere haere ana te awa o kākatara hai ki te taha o tōku marae, ki te mirimiri, te ngutu o tikapa moana. Engari, e tuku atu tēnei mihi mai o hā ki a koutou, mānoa tia o Matariki whānau, ai tika tonu e tautoko ana te kōrero, ko tēnei te wā. He wā hou. Aha ko te taumaha ki murira, kia hau nei, ka kite au ngā whetū o Matariki, i mōhio a hau ko tēnei, he rā kwahura anō, ne? Engari, e mihi atu ana. Engari, ka noho au, aha koa no pare hauraki a hau, i tēnei rangi, ka noho au ki te taha o te whare, ki reira, o whitireia. Ka haramai a hau mai whāngara mai tawhiti i tēnei rangi, kua mate te kuia o tōku hoa tāne, engari kei konei māua ko hone ki te tautoko te whānau no konei i te wā ka tangi hotu nei mo te kuia. Engari, ko tēnei te wā o Matariki, ne, ka hara mai te kupenga o Taramainuku i tēnei wā, ko te ka tuatu o ka puawai te whetu o Pohutukawa i mōhio mātou hea te aha, ahakoa te timatanga o te tauhau, ko tēnei te tauwhakamutunga o tō tātou aitua o tō tātou tini aitua kua wheturangi. Engari, e mihi atu ana ki a rātou, engari ka hoki mai ki te ora, ai, he honore ahau, nōku te whiwhi ki te noho, ki te kōrero atu ki a koutou katoa. Ai, tika tonu, tēnā koe ruakere mo tō mihi, whakatau, o tira kia kōrua rawari rawa ko Jamie, e mihi atu ana. My name is Riana, I hail from a little place called Manaia. It just happens, but not to confuse everybody, it's definitely the Manaia in Hauraki. I've grown up there my whole life, and though that's my place where I've grown up next to my kuia, I'm sitting here today just outside the wharekai, so I hope it's not too noisy. And aroha mai ruakere, I know this is not, but you know the fantastic thing about our marae, they've all got Wi-Fi, because trust me, there's no signal here at Whangara, so it was this, or sitting tata ki te wharekai, or a filmed, oh, there goes my mokopuna behind me, hikama, or a filmed thing, but I really wanted to be here just to honour the kaupapa of tā Maui Pōmare. I am a registered nurse by training. I've worked in hauora my whole career, specifically kaupapa Māori hauora. I have, like all of us, so many aspirations for what this new time means for all of us. And it's so appropriate that as of the 1st of July, we start this new kaupapa, this voyage, if you like, to Paitawhiti, i runga i te waka haurua, and ki te taha o ngā waka haurua katoa. Because one of the things I think we can all agree on is that hauora is much more than the absence of disease. It is the presence of well-being or oranga for our people. And I was so thrilled to hear the kōrero of our wahine before myself, because the economy is one of the major players in reviving oranga for our people. We know that when our people are living in warm whare, when we have a stronger economic base as whānau, hapu and iwi, that we start to see some different decision making and behavioural changes for our people. And that is where, that alongside of our education of our people, is where oranga starts to really change, where we can truly turn the kei of the waka. During my mihi whakatau, Tā Joe Williams was one of my kai kōrero, and I loved one of his kia tūpato moments to all of us, which was that hauora or health, as we've known it formerly, is like a really deeply dug waka. And the problem with deeply dug hulls is that they are very hard to turn. So I would say that to all of us, that whilst it's awesome to have the Maori Health Authority, and that name's about to change, Whānau, so spoiler alert, as of the 1st of July, you'll hear the new names, and we'll never return to that ingoa. But just so we're all clear, as of the 1st of July, we start on a new journey. We start heading toward that place we envisage for Paitawhiti. And for me, it is happy, healthy, resilient, mokopuna, rangatahi, tamariki, because if we get it right for them, it will truly be our legacy. That's the thing we leave behind. A lot of what we do now will make probably not a lot of difference for those of us sitting in the taumata of this age, but it will make so much difference for our babies. So we've got to get it right. One of our key whakatauki is that our mokopuna, our tamariki, will inherit a better system than what we did. And that's, I think, been, if you look back to all of the things, and I'm sure Tā Māui was the same, it was all about the ambition to ensure that mokopuna would inherit a better place, a better system, a better Aotearoa, and that's kind of where we're moving towards. So, as I said, tō tātou waka haurua is one of our kind of key metaphors, if you like, but it's just to be clear that whilst we've got the Maori Health Authority and we have Health New Zealand, they are essentially to Waka. They're part of a fleet, including housing, including education, including our iwi, our hapu, because all of us are going to need to be on this journey in order to create and maintain oranga for our people. We've got a lot of work to do, and it's taken us 182 years to get to this point. So we'll all accept that it won't happen overnight, but it's my determination, and I'm sure it is everybody's determination, that our life should be, our lives should matter in the same way. We should have the same length of life or mortality that other ethnicities have. We should have happy, healthy tamariki who feel resilient in their spaces, who know who they are, who know their whakapapa, even when they don't live close to their marae. My children obviously have been brought up in hauraki all their lives, but they have a hononga back here to Whāngara, they have a hononga back to Ngāti Porou through their dad, and we've maintained that. But that's not the imaginings for all our children at the moment. So we need to make sure that as well as doing our normal, let's fix our hospitals, let's make sure primary care is better, let's make sure that our people have access to better screening, diagnostics, etc. We also have to make sure that we really push hard on te reo, that we get whakapapa sorted out for all of our people, that we make sure that there is a knowledge about who we are as a whānau, as a hapu, and as a iwi, because there are hundreds of thousands of us that currently don't have that esoteric knowledge. And so for that reason, as well as the normal things you would see in our waka, you'll also see my deputy CE of Mātaoranga Māori, who will be responsible with a whole kāhui of people to ensure that reo is a focus, Mātaoranga Māori is a focus, Rongoā is a focus, that we reclaim our atua stories, our pūrākau, and we use these as methods of healing for our people in the same way that we do Panadol, chemotherapy, etc. So just a whakaaro. I'm a bit ranty, so you'll get used to this about me. But I'm also, like I said, just a village girl. I love to make sure that when we're thinking about hauora, we don't just think about those big key places, those big urban centres. They're important because so many of our population live there, but we have to be reminded that for people like my people who live in little villages, really isolated and in rural contexts, there are other ways we can make sure the services get to them. So I've lived my whole life being really innovative around the way that we get services in there. So making sure we have strong broadband platforms that can handle the jandal, because literally an audiologist can do an entire assessment of your ear using a scope and a technician based closer to you in order to make sure that we have better hearing. We know that many of our correction facilities at the moment, for many of our men, they still have glue ear. It's kind of like an unheard of thing, because you should have gotten through that by the time you're finished in your tamarikitanga. It's not usual to have adults, but what it also is a signal of is if you can't hear, then you will struggle to learn. So many of our schools and many of our, and like I say, and onward to our correction facilities, these are people who've literally had a disability most of their lives. So getting things like that back out into those communities, making sure that our wahine can get self-screening services for cervical, that we've got mammography services closer to home. I opened up in Thames the other day, we had the opening of a mammography service where the DHB had literally put the very first mammography suite inside of one of our kaupapa Māori providers. Now that's what you call it. It doesn't take, it's just moving resources. It's not, adding to the pūtea. It's being really clever about where we put those resources and making sure that it gets closer to the people who need it. The other thing I would say is workforce is going to be a huge focus for us. During COVID, and you would have all seen it over there in your villages as well, our kaimanaki really stepped up to the plate. We saw this service come on board. They were vaccinating, they were doing PCR testing. And if you're like me, I mean, I'm a registered nurse. I would go out on the road and I'd have like up to 10 kaimanaki come along with us. And they're younger, and the other thing they are great at is digital. So for me and my elk, we get a little bit flustered by the first kind of, the first thing where the Wi-Fi won't work or something won't work. But our rangatahi, they move around a problem contextually. And so they were awesome to have out there. So I want to see us micro-credential more of those kind of task-driven things for hauora that they can mobilise and get out to. Gone are the days of just going to a clinic. And COVID proved that to us because most of the clinics in the hospitals were shut down or they were closed off for very good reason. So what do we saw more hauora happening in car parks, marae car parks, drive-throughs. These are the things we want to really capitalise on into the future. So creating that workforce, which then means our nursing workforce, it takes the pressure off them a little bit, and you lift up into our doctors, our medical specialists, start taking some of those, the nurses can start taking some of their duties off them. And what we see is more ability to train and maintain placements for all of our students who we need. And we need more Māori working in hauora. So if you're out there and you're thinking about what can I do to really help my people out, come get on the waka with us, whānau, grab one of the hoi, and we'll make sure that you can do some really good work. So that we've talked about workforce, we've talked about the organisation itself. One of the other things that I did want to touch on is that for many of our Māori providers, we're going to be, from 1st of July, we will be the people who will do funding arrangements with them. And what I want to reassure our providers, because I've been there, is that we're going to simplify that. We have 155 kaupapa Māori providers around the motu, and most of them have up to about 100 different contracts, which means 100 different reporting and monitoring mechanisms that you basically have to employ people just to do those jobs. And that's not the go. So what we want is, 1, 2, maybe 3 contracts with really, really, really clear outcomes for our people. And that way you can make your businesses more sustainable. We want longer contracts so that we're not doing these 1-year contracts where you've got no ability to plan or even maintain a workforce. So those things need to change in terms of the way that we deal with our providers. And what was the last thing I was going to put out there? Oh, and if you feel like you want to come and join the actual waka, we've got lots and lots of positions that are going to be coming out, and I encourage you to come along. We're not creating bureaucracy, whānau. You don't have to move to Wellington. In fact, our base is going to be in South Auckland. And my preference is that if you live in Taranaki or you live in the Tairāwhiti, then the good news is we have all of this, and we can talk to each other and have hui, and we can be together in these spaces without moving our people around. And that's another way we give back. It's an act of reciprocity back to our people to get our people home. Because, to be ahika, and I know this for myself, is to be helpful to your village, to be there in times when you do need to do things, as Jamie's just discussed. We too laid our whare to rest after 100 years, because it was basically, going to fall down around us if we didn't. And one of the things that I'm always mindful of is the distinct, that you need more people to be at home. You need more people to be able to support those kind of functions. And our people need to be closer to their points. Well, the virtual world allows us to do that. So we're going to do a lot of work around the data and digital stuff, and a lot of pressing on all of the functions that will enable some of our more remote communities to get access. Because there's no use having education online, hauora online, if you're living in a community where you have no access to these things. It basically disadvantages them. So, just a few whakaaro. And if there's any pātai you have, happy to answer them. Kia ora.
Kia ora mai, Riana. It's so inspiring to have someone that has come from within a community that understands the nature of communities. So I really want to acknowledge that and your involvement within this initiative of the Maori Health Authority. The key thing, I think, in terms of taking away from this, because I'm not sure how much time we have for questions left, but the key thing is that with the example that you gave, as Joe Williams said, a deep hold canoe is difficult to turn. Is that in actual fact, if each region has a localization of what hauora is, what Mataora Maori is with hauora, then it is easier to turn in a localized community, and you'll understand that. So I mean, looking forward to seeing what the Maori Health Authority, Te Hauora Māori nei I Aotearoa, is able to do with really invigorating localized responses to hauora, such as within Taranaki whānui o ngā iwi o Taranaki. E kōrero tau, Tina?
Hi.
No.
I mean, you know, I get into such a rhythm of talking about stuff that I totally forget some of the key artifacts. Right? So obviously, my boards are a design, and they're a specific design around making sure that we give that mana back to where our iwi reside, where our people reside, so that you make decisions more locally. We have two boards, well, each of us, so Health New Zealand has a board of their own. We too have our board at the Interim Maori Health Authority. And, you know, the idea is that whilst you've got that board to make sure that we're doing our jobs, iwi Māori partnership boards will have the ability to make sure that locality planning, so this is about making people work together, because traditionally health has been competitive. And that actually does no favours to the people sitting in the in-between. So we've got to stop with that. We've got to make sure that we recognise that we're just part of a fleet. And so therefore, iwi Māori partnership boards will look to sign off on those plans. And that's the lever they have. If you are not seen in your community to be working in a locality function that includes education and local councils and all the kind of people who can really make a difference in terms of turning the waka, then probably your plan is not going to get there. And if you haven't had a strong relationship with the mana whenua, with iwi and with hapu, then you're probably not going to get sign off on your planning. So it's really encouraging, and I use the word encouraging, not forcing. Or to make sure that they think like that. Because actually, if we go back to our traditional ways of being, on a pā tū wata, we understood that every part of the pā had a job. Everybody knew that if you were in the mara, you were there. If you were hika, you were there. You were part of a community that strived for the good, the well-being of all of that pā. And we've got to that's what locality seeks to do, is that rather than everybody going off on their own tangent and at times duplicating the way that funding is used from the centre out, actually let's be mindful and go, if we didn't have to duplicate funding for the same thing from a different organisation, where might we invest that money in terms of the well-being and the mātauranga Māori of, developing mātauranga Māori for our people? Because we kind of have to get serious about that. What I see all the time is that, our strong, resilient people are people who know where they come from, who know what they're doing, who have got good villages around to support them. Now, all our babies are entitled by birthright to have the same approach. They all deserve to know where they come from, that tupuna that they heke iho from, the knowledge set that was guaranteed to them. It is a birthright. And so we just need to make sure we get those things right. So definitely back to our whānau. It's for Taranaki to tell me what Taranaki needs, not for Riana, ko waia, to say from the centre out, this is how we'll do it, folks.
Pai tērā kōrero Riana, kei te kite au I taku tuakana Rāuri e mene ana, because Rāuri at present, when he's not helping at the pā and doing other things in Waitara, he's within that DHB system in Taranaki. And just on Monday, we had the Te Ware Pūnanga Kōrero, which is the current relationship board with Taranaki DHB, had their AGM. And in the afternoon, a bit of a session about this sort of Māori partnership board arrangements for Taranaki and what that might mean. And I love the fact that I think your words of encouragement are such where it does require us to come together and, as you say, put our mukapuna and think about what that vision and future we want for our whānau. But I guess, there's a lot of expectation on you and the board. And what would your message be for our whānau around what can we expect over the short to medium term? Because I think we on the screen here understand some of the challenges, and as you aptly described, using Joe Williams' sort of words, how we turn the kei of that waka. But I think it'd be really useful just to, from a practical standpoint, what can we see over the next 2, 3, 4 years?
Ka pai, for here pātai pai. So transition is the first thing, right? So obviously the first obvious thing is that you'll have a Maori Health Authority. And remember, this is the first time. It doesn't mean it's the right, we don't know that it's the right thing to do yet, but what we know is that it's the first time that any government has acknowledged that there will be, and I always try to make this part clear, we're not iwi representation, we are a Crown entity, whānau, and but we have been given the task of working side by side with Health New Zealand as both as Crown entities to behave in a te tiriti partnership way to ensure that we make sure that all of our iwi and our hapu get access to the things they need to bring about oranga. So that's the first thing I should probably say. And then atu ki tera, there are some roadmaps that we're designing because I think it's important that our people can see, well, what does the journey look like? So any good journey has a map, and that map should have some po that tell us, are we reaching those goals or are we falling behind? What are the timeframes we can expect? So obviously I talked a bit about contracting. That's a transition thing. That's easy. Mara Andrew and her teams will be coming out around the motu. In fact, I think we came in via Zoom, and my apologies for not being there on Monday. But part of the thing I'm learning about is the getting called to Parliament on a sitting day at the last minute. So that took me out for a little bit. But for the rest of the time, the crew will be coming out, and that is one of the key transitions, which is better ways of funding, mechanisms, better outcome measures. So our providers will feel the change very quickly. Other things like mobilising our workforce, increasing the amount of stuff we can do out of the mobile reaches, that's another quick transformation. Workforce and putting more money into those spaces, another quick thing that we can do in the first 12 months. So in the first 12 months, you should expect to see, you'll still have your doctors and your nurses and your hospitals. Nothing changes in that, except that we're going to move on putting levers in place so that you don't see headlines like what we've seen over the last couple of days and reports coming out eventually that note that Māori get, there is bias that exists for Māori, that Māori mamas, when they're going into maternity annexes, more disadvantaged than other women in those same situations, that they can't recognise themselves in services. So those things can change fairly quickly. What I love about the partnership we have with Health New Zealand at the moment and with Margie Upper, who I just want to acknowledge as the other CEO for Health New Zealand, I know her and I have a similar value set. We're both wahine, we're both mothers, we both come from Indigenous cultures, and we both want to see, and she's grown up in South Auckland, right, born and bred in South Auckland. So she knows, having lived her whole life in Waitara and Mangere, exactly what poverty looks like, exactly why we need to change the way that the system works. So there's some quick things you'll see in there, and we'll describe them and we'll measure against them. And the other thing that we'll do is we've been around the motu on a really quick 2-week tour. We'll continue to come out around the motu because I want to make sure that I stand there in front of people and be accountable. And it's not about one of the things I keep really close to me all the time, Jamie, e hara taku toi te tō takitai ko te takisiri ki. It's, this is not a one-man band, whānau. Change won't come with one person or even one entity. Change comes when we truly recognise the ability to work collectively and collaboratively. Let's chuck all the egos, all the mamai of the past out the door and actually make certain that moving forward into this year, that one of the key things we could do is really give an honest determination to work together in this space to make change. So those are kind of some of the things. Transformation is that longest subset, right? Because we need housing, we need better education systems, we need a whole lot of other things. Those things together, collectively and collaboratively, they will be the change makers. And I've got to say, as I see, and the education system's got a lot of work to be done in that space, because making sure that our people are ready to go for the future that they are entitled to, that's going to take a collective effort on all our parts. So just a few things to start with. Transformation will take a long time, whānau. We took 182 years to get here. And I'm determined it won't take that long for us to turn the Waka around, because at least once you know what's not working, it's really easy to get busy with trying some different things. And technology will be the other, the quick transformation as well, because making sure that we use technology to get services out to people is that's something we have to be determined to do. I'm not saying it takes away from the kanohi kitea process that we're used to, or the ātinana, but we have to, we've got a reduced workforce. We haven't got enough doctors, we haven't got enough nurses, and certainly not enough of them that, we might have some of those things, but they're not necessarily the people who will sing to our well-being. So whilst we train that particular, or while we create the ara for those young ones, which is, realistically 3 to 15 years, if you're thinking about people on the ground and or specialty services, then we've got to do something different. So our kaimanaki and raising them up to do more in this space, that's going to be one of them.
Ka pai e rā kōrero Riana. Ngā iwi o Taranaki e wakarongo ana. Ko te ia o tērā kōrero, kia kotahi rā tātou mō tēnei kaupapa. Mō reira, kia kaha tātou. Kia kaha tātou ki te mahi ngātahi. Bueno, pai e rā kōrero. Ka huri ki a koe rua.
Ko te mea nui nei, Riana, ana kua rongo i te rongo pai. Kua rongo i te rongo tika. E whai ora mai nei ngā iwi, ana, kei te aro atu mātou ki Taranaki, engari mōhio ana ko te hua ka mahora atu ki te motu. Nō reira tēnā koe, Riana, me tēnei rangi.
Tēnā koutou te whānau kia hau te haere, engari kia pai te rangi. Koe wareware, mānoatia a mata.
But I saw our audio on the news saying it's beautiful.
Awo tēnā no tātou. Tērā pia I rongo rāra koutou I ngā kōrero. Riana, mo te taha ki o tātou ware. So one of the messages that Riana sort of spoke about was that when we look at our health and well-being, we look at it holistically. And certainly that's one of the themes of this year's Rā. So we've had Te Waka talking about the importance of financial security, financial independence, having the right habits and behaviours around how we build those behaviours and habits at a whānau level. And Riana providing some really great context around where the Maori Health Authority is heading and what that means for us collectively across the country, but also here in Taranaki. And so one of the points that Riana spoke about is the importance of having warm, dry homes, and that how we can leave a legacy where our mokopuna are receiving what they're entitled to. And so we're calling upon our whanaunga Anaru Marshall of Ngāti Maru, who is going to talk to us about Kāinga Ora Healthy Homes, a kaupapa that Ngāti Maru has been leading out, working alongside WISE, which is an entity that's based out of Waitara. So, tēnei te mihi kia Anaru, ko te tūmanako ia ka puta anō te kanohi a Anaru kia kōrero mai aia I tēnei kaupapa I te ata nei. Nō reira, tēnā koe Anaru, kei te whanaunga.
Tēnā koe Jamie. Kia ora tātou, e te iwi whānui no Taranaki, kuri no te motu. Tēnā koutou, kia koutou mā, Ruakere, Rawiri, Jamie, e arahi nei ki tā tātou nei kaupapa hoki hira o te wā. Tēnā no koutou, tēnā tātou. I'm just going to talk about the housing side of health. And I think it's already been a theme mentioned by both of our earlier speakers is around the house and how we can live how we can make our house warmer and healthier. So Mata, can we go to the first slide, please? And Ngāti Maru has established a partnership with Wise Trust in Waitara, who are delivering a range of really important services in this area too. So Rewi Panoho, one of our whanaunga, who is working and leading this program at WISE. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to give Rewi's apologies. He's got another kaupapa, but he's going to be leading this, and he'll be our contact. And I've got his details at the end of this. So can we move on, please, Mata? So I'm going to be speaking about reducing heat loss, improving heating, and getting moisture in the home under control, and how we can ventilate the home. So, there's a range of things that we can do, insulation, good heating and all of that, but there's also just some behavioural things that we can change, and as a whānau, how we can live better in our homes. Next slide, please. So the age of our houses are getting older. Many of us have lived in houses that you can see here, ranging from, some of them are over 100 years old, right up into like 50, 60 years old. And these houses are still in commission now. So great houses, they've served us well, but they're getting to the end of their tenure. And we have to start looking at how can we make improvements within these homes to make them, keep them healthier. And so on the right-hand side of the slide, you'll see some of the issues that we're going to deal with, the moisture and mold. So what we know is moisture in the home creates damp. Damp creates mold, and mold can irritate our lungs, and also we now know that it can cause asthma. Next slide, please. So I won't dwell too much on this, but on this slide, but it shows here that what the World Health Organization recommends as being ambient temperature in homes, that in Aotearoa we're coming in under that. And so there's some risks around that we have to live with, and some of the things that we want to make changes in. Next slide, please, Mata. This is another statistical slide. Really, all it's saying is that our very young and our very old spend most of their day in the home. Now, if the home isn't healthy, there's no way that we can be healthy living in it. And so we're putting ourselves at risk by not increasing the quality of our housing. An earlier study showed that there's 15,500 people in Taranaki with asthma, and half of the hospitalizations in Taranaki for asthma have been for tamariki under the age of 9. So this is a real issue for us here in Taranaki, and something we're trying to address. Next slide, please, Mata. So these are some of the symptoms and signs of dampness in the home. You'll either see them or smell them. So there's mold growth, condensation on the windows and walls, that musty smell. You might find rotting timber or water stains, or on your walls, maybe bubbling as well, and a damp subfloor. So a subfloor is what's underneath the floor. That's the ground underneath the floor of your house. If that's wet, you're going to have some problems. Some of the causes for this, the outside causes there, rain, land, ground guttering. Those are influences of leaky roofs, block guttering, and I'm talking about the guttering around your the roof of your house. And now's the time to actually clear that, because we've come to the end of autumn, leaves are falling off the trees, and they get into the gutters, and they can block your guttering. And what happens there is the water will come back and flow back into the house. The average age for a roof is about 20 to 25 years, depending on where you live. If you live closer to the coast, it's probably shorter. So if you've got an older roof, you're going to start having problems. So we need to address those types of issues as well. And that's one of the things that we've been doing at Ngāti Maori with our housing program, is putting roofs in place. And we're finding by replacing roofs that we're eliminating a range of other issues that may be in the house. Next one, please, Mata. So these are a few of the ways that we create moisture in the home. So for every individual living in the home, or every adult, every 5 hours, we can, if we're drying our clothes in the house, be up to 5 litres of water coming into your house, just with each load. Cooking on the stove, boiling vegetables and so forth, you can generate up to 1 litre of water every 20 minutes. These cabinet heaters, unflued cabinet heaters, generate up to 1 litre of water per hour. And we're really against those, and I'll talk a little bit about those next. And of course, every 10 minutes in a shower, you can generate up to 1 litre of water. So next slide, please, Mata. So what are some of the solutions? And these are some easy remedies for some of these problems. So put the lids on your pots when you're boiling your food, your vegetables. That'll reduce the steam that comes into the kitchen. And it also reduces the amount of cooking time that you have preparing dinner as well. So that's an easy way of doing it. If you've got extractor fans, use those. Or if you don't have either of those and there's a window nearby, just crack the window while you're cooking and let that steam expel itself from the kitchen. As I said earlier, please don't dry your clothes indoors. Sometimes it sounds easy because we can do it indoors, but if you can put it out in the garage or out in a conservatory or something, that will reduce some of the moisture that comes into your home. The other way of doing it is, of course, to just wipe it. When you see it, wipe it and clean it off. These gas heaters, big issue for us. We've been, I go back 25 years when we had our own children and we're starting out. We had one. We didn't know anything else, and they were easy to access. We bought them at the warehouse, and every time we ran out of gas, we just went down to the garage and refilled it. But unfortunately, we found that they're not great for the house. They create a lot of moisture. There's also exhaust gases that are expelled into the home, and they're actually quite expensive to run. I mean, to fill a gas bottle now is around $50, or it's probably more, increased in the last few months. So we've got to really look at other alternatives. And finally, the warehouse have taken these off the market, and they're now piloting a swap program where they'll take them back and trade them for a better unit. But we understand from warehouse that they're not implementing that in Taranaki yet, but we'll keep you updated on where they have implemented it. If you do find mold, a quick and easy way of getting rid of it, some warm soapy water and an old cloth. Just wipe it away, and then get rid of that old cloth, that rag, because mold is made up of spores, and those spores will be on that cloth. So dispose of it so it's out of the house. And you're probably going to have to do that 2 or 3 times before it's totally gone. But that's the quickest and easiest way of getting rid of it. Thanks, Mata. Here's an example of condensation in the home, what it looks like. We've probably all seen this, especially if we've got aluminium joinery. This is the issue. And one of the things we need to do here is just get up, get a towel and wipe it all down, take it away and go off and hang that towel outside and dry it. Otherwise, that moisture will just stay in the house. The other way, in a real simple way, and many of us will remember that our grandparents probably did this. First thing in the morning, they went and opened all the doors and all the windows and ventilated the house. And that was good practice then, and it's still good practice today. And the reason for that is it creates a cross-flow ventilation system in your home, and it will ventilate all of the stale air from the evening before. Any moisture that's in the air will get dragged out of the home. 15 minutes is probably good enough. So opening windows on one side of the house and on the other side of the house, so you get a bit of a draft through there. 15 minutes is fine. Any more than that, you're going to start to lose some of your heat in the home. But it's a really good and effective way of reducing moisture in the house. Just want to talk a little bit about energy efficiency and how the average home in Aotearoa spends its money in the house. You'll see here the big point, 34% is spent on heating. Hot water is a close second, and really we want to focus on how we can push more of our resources into heating, and we can do that probably by saving more water, more money in how we use hot water. Other appliances, I mean, how many appliances do we have on plugged in that are on standby in the home? They're still trickling energy and electricity out of those. So we want to reduce those costs, just turn them off at the wall. Lighting, there's some quick and easy ways that we can improve our lighting expenditure and also our cooking. So next slide, please, Mata. So some of the ways we can do this is having full-length double-lined curtains installed. And in the top left here, you can see those curtains. A good way of getting double, you really want the double-sided, the double-backed curtains. If you don't have them, an easy way of doing it is getting some old sheets and pinning them along the top, which will create another backing to those curtains. That creates a thermal block, and so you're actually starting to get good thermal efficiency out of that. And so that's just an easy tip, I guess. Your dishwashers, your dryers, your washing machines, run a half a load. And so maximize your usage of that. For your washing, that's also a good option. And have a look at what your heating costs, what your heating systems are and how they work. Yeah, showering. We all like a good shower. But you know, for every 10 minutes we're in the shower using a high flow shower system, it's going to cost $3. Multiply that each person over 1 year, it soon gets up there. Now, most showers are a high flow shower system. The way to and so you're using in excess of 10 liters of water per minute in a normal shower. If you go along to Bunnings for about $10, you can buy a little disc, a small disc. It's called a low flow disc, and you can insert it into the head of your shower. Most nozzles take it, and that will reduce your water flow to around about 7 to 8 liters per minute. So it's a significant saving, and those savings, like I said, can go into heating the home. Where are we, Mata? Here's an example of some heating appliances that are available. All of them have their benefits, and some of them have, there's some cons against some of them. But that's solely to do with how you live and your house. And so what I suggest whenever you're buying heating, take some advice. And this is where I think Rewi comes into it down at the Wise Trust. Part of Rewi's role is to assist whānau to make good decisions, provide some education around living in the home and what options are available. And he can come in and have a look at your home and say, right, you actually need this type of system, or this type of system would work better for you. So it's good advice and well worth looking into. One thing I just wanted to say is around heat pumps. I don't know how many homes, you know, we all have, those of us that have heat pumps, often you walk into a home and it's on full charge and it's just blasting. And the risk there is that it's cold, so you're going to put it on high and run it flat stick. Well, what happens is it'll probably never get to the temperature regulated. So if you put it on 30, it'll probably never ever get to 30, so it'll never turn off. But if you set the settings down to 20 to 22 degrees, it will get to 22 degrees and then switch off. And then as it cools down, the house cools down, the temperature thermostat picks it up and it turns itself back on. And so this is the process of how a heat pump should work. It should just, during the day, during the evening, it just should be flicking on and off without you actually knowing about it. And that's a much more efficient way of using your heating. And I recommend that for everybody who uses heat pumps. This is just an example of where we lose heat in our house. 35% of it goes through the ceilings, and 50% goes out through the walls and the window. Yeah, that's what we're trying to prevent. Next slide, please, Mata. To prevent heat loss, insulation, of course, that's the first thing. And there's a range of options available for us with insulation, and speak to Wise about that. As I've mentioned earlier, good curtaining, that's always going to help you retain the heat in the house. And any major areas that are exposed, like old chimneys, block them up and prevent the heat loss going up those old chimneys. And just one last thing is under doorstops. If you can't get a doorstop, get an old towel and plug it in there to prevent the draft and losing heat during the evening. Okay, Healthy Homes Inspections. Now this is the program that Rewi is running down at Wise. So it's a new program, and it's designed to increase warm, healthy homes for tamariki under the age of 5 years of age. So it's whether they're living with mum, dad, or nan and koro, it doesn't matter. If they're of that age, I would say get in touch with Wise and talk to Rewi, and he will be able to talk to you about everything we've discussed today, but actually make some recommendations and put a plan together that will suit your home to become a warm, healthy home. And just our final slide, please, Mata. And as I said, Rewi will be leading that, and these are his contact details on the left. Just Wise Charitable Trust on Facebook, you'll find them pretty easy there. And here are our contacts as well. So the relationship between Wise and Ngāti Maru is Wise will be providing us with reports and plans on Whānau homes and what needs to be done, and we'll be assisting with our program to implement some of those changes and bring in some interventions to improve the health and well-being of the house and the whānau. Ka pai, Jamie?
Tēnā koe Anaru, māku koe me te mōhio tonu kua roa koe I roto I tēnei kaupapa, me te whakaro hia nei ngā whānau kua whai ora I runga I tērā huarahi o. Nō reira, e harei te mea ko ngā whare anahei o ngā whānau, engari ko tātou marae, ka titiro atu au ki ngā rongo te whare nui ki tarata, ana tōna pai, tērā marae e whakaari ana I tēnei kaupapa hauora. Nō reira, tēnā koe te manaki I tāne whakapiripiri te tangata I roto I te hauora. Anaru, I think this beautiful kaupapa of yours has come a long way from the times of Maui Pōmare, when he was forced on some occasions to literally burn a house down to prove a point that the houses were unhealthy, were unsafe to live in. And to encourage people to move to places and to build houses that were more healthy, to be able to change those statistics of the statistics of child mortality and early death rates among our communities. So this kaupapa is very much in line with Maui Pōmare. Aha kua kare a rewi tā mai, ka moia tonu ana kua hora tō kaupapa. Tēnā, Anaru, we probably don't have enough time to be able to have questions as such, but the main thing is with the slides, and people will be able to watch the presentation again later, and we'll be able to whakapātu ki e rā tangata. Those contact details that you had on that last slide are there available to anyone who wants to find out more about how to improve the conditions of their living environment in the house that they live in. So tēnā koe Anaru, e mana ki nei te hauora o ngā whānau I roto o Taranaki. Tēnā totu.
Tēnā koe.
Nō reira, ana, kua huri nāi nei ki tētahi whanaunga. Tēnā koe Troy. E mihi ana ki a koe hara mai nei i roto i a tau e ngā mahanga tairi. I tēnei huarahi e haere nei koe ki te hauora ara ko te kaupapa i roto i te kura matatini o Taranaki. Troy, welcome to Maui Pōmare Day. Welcome to this kaupapa that maintains the legacy of Maui Pōmare in future generations, and you are very much a part of that. In terms of welcoming you, I welcome you as a whanaunga from ngā maanga tairi, and acknowledging your kuia, Dulcie, who was a prominent nurse in the time. She nursed the veterans who came back from war, who were suffering from the effects of their experience overseas in the First World War, and the work that she did for hauora around the coast as well. So mihi nei tēnei kia koe. I'd like to acknowledge you in particular around the concept of this Maui Pōmare scholarship and how important it is to have a connection, a tangible connection between the legacy of Maui Pōmare and the actual mahi of producing it and encouraging more people to take this path. And Troy, you would have no doubt have just seen Riana present her kōrero, started out as a nurse and then moved through and continued to advance to a point where now she is in such a senior position to be able to really manage major change for the whole country. So obviously we're not saying that you have to emulate that, but if you want to try that, do that. Kei te pai, kei konei a katoa Taranaki e tautoko ana. No doubt it will be different from the time when you're managing the national organisation to what is currently in place now. But Troy, I'd just like to welcome you from this kaupapa of Te Kura Matatini o Taranaki from WIT, and the efforts that all of those who have put into maintaining the nurse training, the nursing studies and WIT, to make sure that we are able to produce and support the next generation or the next group to take on these roles of working for hauora among our people. Tēnā koe, Troy, e te whanaunga, tēnā tātou.
Kia ora, kia ora. I just want to tautoko that about WIT and the mahi that they do in awhiing us along our journey of, where we start off in year 1 to then year 3. So I just want to tautoko you on that and just say a big thanks to WIT for all the mahi that they do for us Māori and everybody at WIT. I just want to as well acknowledge Jessie, who is the other recipient of the Maui Pōmare Scholarship. I know she's going to be a fantastic nurse, and she works hard. So kia ora.
Perhaps, Troy, if you can talk about, in particular, the way in which you see the mahi that you've got ahead of you. You're very much, we've heard you're very, very enthusiastic about this kaupapa hauora, which you need to be able to survive in this environment, but also understanding the political associations of health. We're not just talking about the physical health, we're talking about spiritual, about environmental, but we're also talking about political context in which health is operating in the current environment. So, te rape he whakaaro kei au koe. Perhaps if there's anything you can say from your perspective on that matter.
Yeah, so I'm in an unfortunate position to be a part of Labour and Young Labour in New Zealand. And what that's giving me is an opportunity to be able to be in a political realm and an area. And that's just so crucial for me personally, because when I'm a nurse, I'll be able to see the challenges that nurses and patients have in the hospitals or wherever it may be. So by being a nurse eventually, if I make it, by being a nurse and then moving on to a political field or more so management, I think that's given me a real clear insight to nursing and the practices that we're doing and possible changes for positive ways and outcomes.
Kei te ngū tō reo, hua.
That classic mistake of talking to myself. Troy, I just really want to acknowledge you and this journey you're taking. I'd like to acknowledge the effort that is ahead of you and Jesse, and understanding that it's not just you two as well; it's the whole group that is on this pathway. The sorts of things I think that most of our people would like to hear is the way in which the training program that you're on, how much our Māori is incorporated into the context of the learning, how many opportunities there are to be able to engage with hauora Māori in your training experience.
So on the first couple of weeks, we had 2 Indigenous days, Māori Indigenous days, which included us learning about the cross-cultural respect between a Pākehā and a Māori. And we really dived down and got into the real nitty-gritty stuff of, the big word of racism in hospitals and in our healthcare sector, which is obviously unacceptable. So by us learning now is about this Indigenous and about the Māori people and the cultural respect that nurses have to show, we're going to be implementing that when we're nurses in 3 years' time. And then the next generation of nurses will also learn about that Māori culture. So it's just going to be a nice flow-on effect of that cultural respect. Now, WIT has many tutors and staff that are based around supporting Māori students. And I think that's so crucial. Being Māori myself, I find it very challenging in an education setting. But by WIT having that support and awhi, just makes things a lot better for me. I always have a place to go, to Perere, all those kinds of places. And tutors, fantastic. Always got that place to have a kōrero with.
Tēnā koe, Troy. Welcome to the ao o te hauora. Welcome to Maui Pōmare Day. Follow in the footsteps of Maui Pōmare and follow in the footsteps also of your kuia of Dulce Hill, and the connection that I hope that you make in the future in terms of coming and working within our communities to sustain hauora in the many years ahead. So tēnā koe e te whanaunga, tēnā tātou katoa.
Kia ora.
Akati tina no rā tātou e te Whānau, ana inaia nei, kua huri te aro ki tēnei kāhui a tāhua, kua piri mai ki tō tātou rā, koutou rā, Heruini, e mere, Patricia, ko koutou e whakakanohi nei i tēnei kaupapa tāhua o te aranga. Nō reira, ka nui rā te aroha kia koutou, kua piri mai ki tō tātou rā, ki tō tātou kaupapa i tēnei ata. So kia ora everyone, we now have our whānau from Te Aranga. And you're probably wondering, and no doubt many of you in Taranaki have engaged with our whānau on screen here. And I thought it would be useful to provide some context. Te Aranga being a kaupapa and initiative that was a collective iwi initiative throughout our region. And so Te Aranga was a response by our 8 iwi of Taranaki coming together to develop a regional strategy that would assist us through this process of recovery from COVID. And the name Te Aranga o Taranaki, Te Aranga i te pō, Te Aranga i te ao, really sort of captures that particular kaupapa that as we arise, we rise again from some of the challenges that we've experienced from COVID. We had a strategy that was developed collectively by the iwi. And who we have on screen here are the people that make that strategy real. So they've been working hard across the priorities that have been set to support our whānau and our communities through this COVID period, but again, through this period of transition as we come out of COVID and start thinking about what support might be needed for our whānau. And you will see whānau through the trend, the sort of adverts that we've had today, very much a consequence of our Te Aranga Whānau. But I'll let them do the talking, and they can they can discuss some of the work that they've been doing and work that is planned ahead. Nō reira, ka huri atu rā kia koutou e mere.
A tēnā koe, Jamie, te tuatahi mihi ana ki ngā mate o te wā, haere atu rā, nō rā ki te hunga ora kia koutou aku rangatira, kai te puke mata tēnei wā, mihi ana kia koutou aku tūngane. Ki aku kaiarahi. Kei aku kaiarahi kua hono mai, piri mai ki taku taha tēnā tātou katoa. Yeah, thanks, Jamie, for that intro into Te Aranga. There's lots of kōrero, ko wai rātou, who are they? We are you, you are us, we are ngā iwi o Taranaki. He ringa raupā mā ngā iwi e waru e hua mā. So we've got a little bit of a slideshow in our flash background because we wanted to show who we are and who we work for. Ka pai, so Mata's going to flick us into the next slide. So Jamie's probably best talked to this stuff, but essentially this is our mahi that we were brought on board to do, which is iwi regional recovery. And there are a number of priorities that ngā iwi e waru had put together in their wisdom in following the 2020 COVID lockdown and needing to collectivise their thinking, their thoughts, their actions strategically, and how we could move forward and respond to the impacts of COVID way back then in 2020. Jamie, do you want to add anything at this point around those priority po?
Well, just that there were a number of priorities that were identified as part of the work of our iwi coming together, but these were the three immediate priorities that we saw would add benefit and value to our whānau. So very much when we developed and designed the regional recovery framework, it had our whānau at the heart. And of course, you know, as was discussed earlier by Riana, one of the key sort of priorities is how we have that collective leadership. Pēhia, you know, me pēhia e mahi ngātahi, ngā iwi o Taranaki, ngā whānau o Taranaki, Mataora o ngā iwi me ngā whānau o Taranaki. And of course, the other two there that Em will no doubt touch on through the presentation.
Yeah, kia ora, Jamie. So what we wanted to do today was to really touch on the third po, self-sustaining communities with our whānau here. And it was talking about whānau coming together to be resilient, build resilient communities to look after each other. So Mata, if we can go to the next slide. So really what amplified Te Aranga out into the hapori or the community was in August 2021, our vaccination rates at that time were 12.5% for Māori and 21% for non-Māori. And if those of you that remember, we were probably at the bottom of the ara as a DHB and for our vaccination rates for Māori. And we knew that the interventions that were being offered weren't hitting the mark and that we needed to do something differently. Our people weren't going to book into appointments, they couldn't get appointments, etc. So we wanted to do things that were a bit more responsive and that met the needs of uri and whānau. And we, at the end of the day, we wanted to increase the Māori vaccination rates for COVID. And fast forward to June 2022, we are currently sitting at 88% Māori. On the right, you'll see 12% tamariki Māori vaccinations for COVID. So we've got a lot of work to do, but also we're not just about COVID, we're about wellness, as the other speakers have talked to. It's all holistic. It's all about our oranga across the board and that tauwhi, touching on that tauwhi kaupapa that you'll see flash across your screens. We're wanting to get the immunisation rates, the vaccination rates up in all of our different kaupapa, and we work we're not health professionals. I'll let the team talk what they've been doing. That's them in the pictures. But essentially, we're here as hapori working to support and, help with the capacity, help with the workforce, help with locality, about our drives to in the self-sustaining community. So I'm going to tukuna te rākau kōrero kia Selwyn, rawa ko Peri, tēnei wā.
Oh, well, tēnā tātou. Me I kau atu rā ki a koe o aine em. O tino ki a kōrua tai. E Jamie, e Pāpara Awiri. Me te mei atu ki a Mataora kere. O tino ki taku pau kai ara I a whaine pet. Yep, that's been us sort of on the ground. We've done quite a fair bit, haven't we? We've basically tried to cover from Urenui all the way to Ōpunake. We've tried to, we've delivered a lot of things, I guess, and what Whainem was starting to kōrero about was, in the beginning we were out there door knocking for vaccinations, to up our vaccinations, and it just seems like that it's better when whānau are out there doing their own community, rather than having sort of, I don't want to be mean here, but having outsiders come into our community feels sort of feels like infiltration from the outside, I guess. So we've done all door knocking. We've walked 1,000,000 miles, I guess. It's good for the tinana whānau. We've been assisting Tuuta. Tuuora's been one of our whānau that we've been collaborating with when it comes to delivering vaccinations, having familiar faces in vaccination clinics is sort of a big thing for our whānau, because again, whānau don't want to walk in there and see an outsider. It just makes our whānau feel a lot more comfortable. We've gone through saliva testing. Whānau will have known we've sort of pushed saliva testing, pushed it for accuracy, ensured that our whānau can get to places. So we've gone all over the motu with saliva testing, from Urenui again all the way to Ōpunake, just to have that service available for our whānau. We've had rat stations, you name it. We've been to events. We've had the privilege to going down to Pariaka for Puanga Kaurau to distribute rats for whānau coming in. I'm bearing in mind I don't want to take all the time up, and I just want Whaine Pet to have a bit of a kōrero about what's been happening around the coast, because I haven't had a lot of involvement. As you all know, this is I'm very, very Waitara-centric, but I love everyone. So I'll just pass it over to Whaine Pet, and then if you want me to fill in time, I can sure do that.
Morena kia tātou. Te mea tūtahi ka whakamihi o te rā, ko tau Māui. I've maybe just over 6 months, I Ōpunake. The things that I about in terms where we've been, where we started and where we are today, that whakatauki tia te hupo mai rangi tia te angi tū. Fear, what is it? Fear but do it anyhow. And so there was at the very beginning a little bit to our communities, especially when COVID was at that real height where there was so much information out there. But yeah, to now, it's been an amazing journey. And, thank everybody, EMS, for that opportunity to work in our communities, reconnect with whānau and people, whether they be Māori, Pākehā, Chinese, in our own communities, because I've been away for a little bit. But coming home, it gave me a reconnection. Then, as someone was saying about people coming in and infiltrating in our areas, I actually went to Waitara I used to live in Waitara years ago. I like thinking so, but we made reconnections with families that I haven't seen for years through this kaupapa, and now working through to the winter wellness preparedness. It's been a journey. I've loved it, and I think all our team has, and our team has got to learn a lot more about the areas that we can. It's the information that has been clearing and the mahi that we have done has been amazing. Tauranga now kete for us. That's me, I think. It's like, I don't want to take up too much time either.
Kia ora, Patty. I think these two are very humble actually in their role and what they've been doing alongside their other kaimahi, but they've essentially been door knocking. They've been giving out wellness, preparedness packs, rats, distributing rats. We've got a rats phone. We call it the rat phone. So you can text that number if you need rats, and these whānau will get those rats out to you. So we've been really innovative in our thinking as a rōpū and trying to get the access, open up access to information, and also just different, whether they need rongoā. We heard about rongoā this morning, and that was part of our kaupapa, not just giving out Panadols and Western medicines, but also supporting our rongoā practitioners. To Ramatia Taranaki Rongoā Collective worked alongside us to prepare and supply those packs and continue to do that. And also, I think the other thing was about in a bit higher up, Te Aranga was able to collectivise the response on behalf of Ngā iwi o Taranaki in terms of bringing us all together. We were a bit disparate, we were a bit fractured, all trying to work towards the same goal, but in our own little, in our own way. And so Te Aranga was able to come through the middle, being a non-health kaupapa, but being a hapori kaupapa, and say, hey, what needs to be done? How can we help? How can we awhi? And I think the stats show for themselves that the efforts and the results that this team have helped Ngā iwi o Taranaki to deliver for our hapori. They went out there and they got trained, they're CPR trained, they're first aid trained, and none of that e hoa Māui had to pay for. We tapped into using what our resource was, our whānau, and we tapped into the government resources available through our Maori health providers, working closely with them, and the DHB, Rawiri mihi ana kia rātou. They've been actually very, very useful in terms of opening those levers, opening the doors. Our whānau got accredited with MOH as non-health professionals to be able to go around with tablets and remove, using technology. Riana talked about that. So I think our team are very innovative, and they're very, locality is important to them, whānau is important to them, and whānau wellbeing is important to them. No reira, we just want to say mihi ana ki ngā iwi o Taranaki, and ko tēnei a Te Aranga.
Ka pai tēnā koe e mere, heroini, tatu atu rā kia koe, Pat. Tāku no, maringa nui ko koutou. Maringa nui ko koutou, ngāri ngā hāpai, ngāri ngā āwina, ngāri ngā tautoko i o tātou ānau. Me o kōrero Pat, e harei te mea māmā, no reira I māia koutou, I manawa nui koutou, I manawa roa koutou, ki te uru ki ngā kāinga o ngā wānau, ki te tuku I te aroha, ki te tuku I te manaaki. So whānau, I thought it really important that we have our Te Aranga whānau share with us and be present with us today for our rākaranga, because many of you may have had some interaction with our whānau on screen. And as I said in Māori, we've been really blessed to have Emere and the team, Selwyn and Pat being two of many who have played a major role in supporting our whānau through what has been a very challenging time. And I know I've seen the results and the fruit of their work, and I just want, from the bottom of my heart, on behalf of our iwi of Taranaki, to acknowledge you all for your mahi, and look forward to more mahi to come, because I think what COVID has demonstrated, and I think what Riana touched on, is that, you know, through challenge there's always opportunity, and one of the great things from COVID has been the way in which our whānau have been able to step up to support, to work alongside our whānau, but importantly to gain skills and hopefully change the models of care and support that we can provide in the future to our whānau. Nō reire, mihi ana ki a koutou, tēnā koutou, a tēnā rā tātou.
Alo, tēnā no tātou, ngā mihi nui ki a koe, a Jamie, me te kawe o ngā tikanga mo tō tātou nei hui i tēnei rangi. Haere tonu ngā mihi rungi a ruakere, ana kātahi ka wehi a mātou, a tātou, nō reira, a tēnā koutou. I've just been absolutely amazed at the kōrero that's been brought up this morning, te Waka McLeod, ka Uruora, Riana, Anaru, you know, Troy, Ryan. It's amazing to see that succession and to see our whānau coming up through these education facilities, and Selwyn, Emere and Pat. That's been just so inspiring for us. Nō reira, tēnā rā koutou. Ngā mihi nui ki a koe media, ko tai mai hei reo Pōmare mo tātou i tēnei rangi. Nā nei mātou o te kāinga nei, e mihi kawatu ki a koe, ki a koutou rā, I roto o koutou kāinga, uri no tai atu ki te pōneke rā. Anō reira, kei a koe i te wānei, ka nui te mihi, tēnā koe miria, nau mai, ia haere mai. Tēnā koe miria, so happy to have you along. Ka pai. I'm not sure if we can hear you. We can't hear you.
There's media's sort of working out her sound. This is always going to happen, whānau, with technology. We're not immune to sort of little technology sort of hiccups along the way, but Rawiri, it might be just useful for you to talk a little bit about what's happening at the pā at the moment in terms of some of the work on our houses, and then, you know, some of the detail around our kuia tamawahine.
Ka pai rā. Look, it's been an amazing year this last year. Unfortunately, the first 2 years, this is our third year without being able to hold our Pōmare commemorations and celebrations on the marae. The first 2 years, of course, we were knocked out by COVID, and unfortunately, we've had to hold off for another year as we get tamawahine sorted out. Tamawahine has been such a beautiful building to us. It was very sad for us to have to lay her down this year, but in the interest of upholding her dignity, we needed to allow her to go and allow the new buildings to come through. So we've had a lot of support from Oranga Marae, ko tahitanga o Te Atiawa, who have supported us to be able to re-establish that whare manaki o tātou i rungi i te marae. And so Ngarue has had the big revamp, as you said earlier. It's a beautiful little whare. We've managed to take the little slidey doors off the back wall and put in the original style windows that were in there. And we're looking forward to being able to use Ngarue a lot better than we have been able to in the past. So yeah, there's a lot of work. As soon as we've finished with Tamawaine, ko Tamawaine, we have to move towards Te Maui. We have a lot of work. We've just recently had a new roof put on it, so The original roof that was on there has now been replaced. But of course, with all whare taonga like our one, it requires some expertise on the other aspects of it. So there's a lot of work ahead of the trustees, and even though we've been unable to open up for our whānau, they've been very patient with us, and we look forward to being able to celebrate our whānau on the marae again. You know, Jamie, it's very hard for going from 100 miles an hour and a different kaupapa every week to tumbleweeds running across our ātea. So, yeah, we're looking forward to a great year. We're not sure when the building will be finished. We have delays here and there, but so far the builders up there, Cleveland's, have been fantastic in keeping the timeline. And we're looking to perhaps almost to November for reopening. But we'll get settled on times and dates and the organisation of opening of the new whare. We're hoping that the new whare will honour the old whare that was there. It was a very sad occasion, 100 years this year on the 18th of March. So, yeah, it was a hard one to let go of and a hard one, but we found that most of our community have appreciated the need for us to do the work that we have to do and be able to look after our people and our whānau as they come back on to utilise the marae environment again. But yeah, I have to shout out, it's not nice to mihi to ourselves, but our trustees that have been on there have done a fantastic job, and Selwyn slipped through as a rep on Te Aranga. And he's absolutely a bonus for them. They've really lucked in with him. He's I love the name of Te Aranga. We rise, and we rise again. And Selwyn has been one of our trustees working hard on the marae. But also to some of our others that work behind the scenes and we never see. Tiri Porta, who's our administrator in there, her mum Patsy and dad Graham, who are always at the marae, are doing all the jobs that we need. Last week we had a working bee. We had a great response from our community to come up there and look after the marae. So, yeah, there's a lot of work to be done. Mostly around the marae, we've got a lot of noxious weeds and things like that that are peeking through. We've got some large trees that need to come down. So there's always work to do at the marae. And we're blessed to have a community that's supportive of that work.
Ka pai. Tēnā koe, Rauri. Tēnā koe. And then, of course, whānau is... Okay, kua hoki mai a media. Kei te ngū tonu tō reo media. And as media sort of works on tōna reo, i tōna rorohiko, whānau, when we opened our rā this morning, you would have heard Ruakere make reference to puanga. You know, e tue puanga, I te tahi o pipiri, which of course puanga being a key star that we reference for the closing of the year that has been and the year ahead. And I referenced in my kōrero a particular line, ka tahia te pō, ka tahia te marama, ka tahia te tau, ara ko te tahinga hoki tēnei a puanga, ara ko te pua tawhiwhi o tautoru. And just sort of bringing to life some of our kōrero of Taranaki, which relate to the rising of puanga and what puanga symbolises for us in terms of marking, you know, tahia te pō, so marking sort of those longer nights, tahia te marama, tahia te tau, and marking that year that has passed. And of course, when we think about the year that has passed, we acknowledge all of our mate of the past year. And of course, the kawe mate component of te rao Pōmare is a key aspect of our rā, bringing those that have departed. And as we know, that opportunity to be able to mourn and acknowledge those that have gone and sort of release them and then think about what those new opportunities are as we move forward. And so it's wonderful that we can acknowledge and celebrate puanga. And it's actually quite fitting that it sort of fits with our rā. Of course, tā Māui passed on the 27th of June 1930, Rauri, yeah, 1930. So this year marks 92 years since Tā Māui's passing. And how fortunate we are to have his tiki kōhatu at Waitara, but also our whare tikarua Māui, which, you know, as I said in our mihi, he whare kōrero, he whare wānanga. And it provides a place for us to come together to talk about, you know, our foundational narratives and kōrero, but also think about what we want for the future. And so hopefully you've all had the opportunity to look at how you can reflect on the year that has been, come together as whānau. And I think, you know, next year, thinking about how we might celebrate puanga and matariki in Waitara and Taranaki as we carry that particular kaupapa forward. But, you know, many have said this is our time, whānau. It's a wonderful time to be Maori, ne Rauri. I often say it's not always easy, but it is a wonderful time.
Oh, look, I'm working within health and seeing all the changes that are happening, seeing our people come together and, you know, overcoming the difficulties that we have in front of us. At the end of the day, we look at our whānau that are entering into the hospital and we're looking for better health outcomes for them. And seeing that what's going on in the community to support these outcomes is just really inspiring. I think if Tā Māui was around today, this would be the sort of work that he was that he'd have us doing. It's just sad to see some of the politics that happen around election time, where Maori health becomes a political football, and you know, it makes our people worry about, is this actually going to happen? These demeaning parties or these people that want to take cheap shots at Maori health in order to boost their own votes in other areas. It sort of sets people a little bit, it's a bit disconcerting, but seeing the weight of the support that's coming through behind the Maori Health Authority and the weight of support that's coming through for the changes that we're seeing today, it's going to take a little bit more than the usual political grandstanding to upset these waka haurua. So yeah, no, it's quite an exciting time.
Right.
Oh, we got to go here.
Ole te iwi kua hua raru te reo o media I tēnei ata. Engari, kei te kite tātou I aia.
Can she phone in ho?
We will see, yeah. But I think just touching on Rauri, I mean, it's really important when we reflect on Tā Māui and the legacy that he left when he went into Parliament. I mean, it was very much focused on, you know, changing the sort of the circumstances that had afflicted our whānau. You know, sort of health was a key focus. And in addition to that, of course, aspects around te muru me te raupatu. But I think, you know, when I reflect back on Tā Māui, I mean, he was at the forefront of Maori health reform, and very, very much around transforming the circumstances of our people at that time, where many others had actually referenced us as being a dying race. And when I reflect on Tā Māui's legacy, I think it's really important that a lot of the time what he was promoting was not popular. And we've heard media sort of reference some of these particular initiatives and some of the challenges that Tā Māui felt at that time. And Ruakere referenced the sort of poor sanitary and hygiene standards that were prevalent among many of our Māori kāinga and villages of that time. And, you know, he was literally burning kāinga and, you know, looking to transition our people to alternative living conditions and standards. But, you know, and I think it's one of those, and I think back to our tiaranga team, you know, Hiruini and Pat and others at a time where there was a lot of misinformation around COVID, around vaccines and all of those sorts of things. You know, we had whānau from our hapori, from our communities, sort of putting their hands up, stepping up to go and have a conversation, a kōrero, a cup of tea with whānau to explore those elements. And to a certain extent, it was probably no different to Tā Māui, despite him being in Parliament, but he was doing the same. He was he was walking among our people within their communities, meeting and discussing some of these issues with them. And, you know, that's not too dissimilar to our whānau from Te Aranga in terms of the work that they've been doing over the last couple of years. So, yeah, not always easy.
Yeah, some of the work that he's done, I think the government's missed the mark. So he was instrumental in setting up of the Sims Commission and having hearings about the wrongs that were committed against our tūpuna. So as we move forward, those matters have been addressed, but somehow the government still missed out on supplying some justice for the wrongs that were done. But, you know, those are part of the kaupapa he was involved in. It's the same with our housing problems, even within Waitara. Huri noto tata nei maunga tai atu ki te motu whānui, housing is a major issue for us. So much in the same way as everyone's stringing together to get better health outcomes for our whānau within the DHBs and Maori Health Authority and then within our community, we're certainly trying to find a resolution to the housing problems within our communities. One of the dangers I've always felt is that we could lose our footprint of our people within our town simply because the lack of housing, the lack of rentals, and our people are having to move to other areas. So it's a real crucial area, and it's just as relevant today as it was then. But today I think we've got some resources, and if we put those resources in the right place, we can pick up on those areas as well. So yeah, I don't know, we've got a lot of work ahead of us, you know, the whole community has, and all of us who are working within the different trusts that we're on.
Certainly, and that's a key theme, right, whānau? I think, you know, Riana, in terms of the Maori Health Authority, just reflecting that, you know, things are changing, but we're going to be going through this sort of transition. But I guess, you know, what it does require is for us to have faith. You know, me whakapono tātou ki nei kaupapa. Yeah, we've got to have faith and confidence that, you know, we can actually deliver better outcomes for ourselves if we're in control. And, you know, a lot of that, as Riana sort of commented on, despite there being the Maori Health Authority and the role they play, it's very much about us as whānau, as organisations in the regions. And, you know, but ultimately, for us as individuals and individual whānau to have confidence and faith in what we do and what we can do collectively as whānau.
Yeah, so we have, I don't know, Riana spoke about the fleet. You know, it's not just the wakahaurua for health, but there are other areas that you know, we're coming together on. One of the biggest issues is that usually when we have a change, it's usually just a name change or a logo change, and business as usual carries on afterwards. And, you know, from what I've seen of Riana's work and the work that our Te Whare Punanga Kōrero is doing, and the work that our Māori Health Directorate with the Māori Health and Equity Directorate within the hospital is doing, it's more than just a logo change. It's more than just a name change. So as we all reshuffle and try and find ourselves in the best position to make the changes that we need, there's a lot of work going in there. But this is more than just a, you know, when we've got the Pai Order framework with Whānau Order, Māori Order and Wai Order, we're touching on all of those things with healthy families, healthy individuals and healthy environments. And I'm really pleased that our speakers today were able to touch almost on every part of the Pai Order framework moving forward. This time, eh?
Can you hear me now? Kia ora.
Kua tai mai koe. Nā, tēnā koe, Miriam.
Oh, tēnā koe. Tēnā tātou katoa. Ko papa tūnuku e hora nei ko Ranginui i ki runga. He whakapapa Māori tēnā ki a tātai ihu mai ki ngā mea katoa o tēnei au. Kua pērā tonu te hanga o te tangata ki a puta mai ki te whai au ki te ao mārama. Nā reira e hoa mā. E hara tēnei tū he tū takitahi. Kei runga hau i ngā pokohiwi o ku tūpuna kia kawe atu ai, tō tātou kaupapa kia whakaora ake tō tātou iwi nui ko te iwi Māori. O te rā, anei anō tētahi mokopuna nā tā Māui, e tū atu nei, hei kai kawe kōrero ki te taho tōku whānau. He honore nui rawa ki au, kia tātai iho nei ki oku iwi o Taranaki whānui. Ki te mahara hoki ki a rātou mā, te hunga mate, mō tātou te hunga ora, e hono nei, aha kua kānohi mai, zui mai, kia tau te rangi Māori e, kei runga ki a tātou katoa. At this time every year, as puanga rises in the midwinter sky, we come together to celebrate Te Rao Māui Pōmare and the beginning of the Maori New Year. This is a time to huddle around the warmth of the fire and to acknowledge those who have departed this world. It is also a time to discuss whānau aspirations and deliberate current issues which include the health and well-being of our whānau. So once again, we come together at this auspicious time of the year to commemorate the life of Tā Māui, whose bold and visionary leadership and personal strength, courage and resilience set him apart as one of the greatest Māori leaders and national political figures this country has ever known. These leadership abilities and qualities instilled from a young age were consistently demonstrated throughout his educational pursuits and political career, including through his pioneering health strategies and reforms, which played such a crucial role in the turnaround of the Māori population at the turn of last century. His legacy to implement innovative health initiatives continues to this day, where whānau are central to executing cultural solutions to current issues in order to restore confidence, self-belief, and invigorate wellness. So today, as we celebrate Tā Māui's life, we also reaffirm our cultural identity, an identity which, in stark contrast to the dire situation in Tā Māui's time, now encompasses greater life expectancy and an increasingly expanding Māori population. This year is especially auspicious, however, as we come together nationally to celebrate Matariki as the first Indigenous public holiday in Aotearoa. It signals a new level of government commitment to Te Ao Māori and recognition of the importance of Te Ao Māori, not just in defining who we are as a nation, but in setting us apart from the rest of the world. Celebrating Matariki as a national holiday also reinforces the relevance and legitimacy of mātauranga Māori in the national psyche, and it enables the values and principles of Matariki to be promoted in a way that can be readily understood and embraced by all New Zealanders. Furthermore, it ushers in a new dawn of Māori Crown relations in this country and provides a national focal point for unifying a common sense of identity for all New Zealanders in Aotearoa. Having witnessed the official launch of Matariki at Te Papa yesterday morning, where leading tohunga gathered together and performed karakia to herald in the Maori New Year, it dawned on me how significant the presence of our Prime Minister was alongside those tohunga, standing shoulder to shoulder with them, which to my mind was a powerful demonstration of the government's commitment to this kaupapa and the future direction of our country. Could it be that we have finally come of age as a nation? Well, this of course was the vision that Tā Māui and the trailblazers of the Young Māori Party were striving to achieve in their time by highlighting the central importance of te tiriti to Maori health reform and indeed to the constitutional legitimacy of our nation. 100 years on, and we're still on this journey of nation building, struggling to reach our final destination point. But right now it seems we are at the threshold of a new frontier in participation, sitting at the top table and possessing enough influence to hold this nation to account for its past and future actions. Never before Have we had so much potential for transformational change, providing the country with an opportunity to reset without the racism? With many more Māori members across Parliament and Cabinet Ministers in action, the government appears to have genuine concern for our people, taking seriously obligations to honour Te Tiriti o Waitangi with commitments to making the transformation actually happen. Establishing Matariki as a public holiday is, I believe, part of this fundamental reset of the political and cultural psyche of the country. And listening to our kai kōrero today, much of which alludes to the Crown Māori partnership as a genuine and effective vehicle for bringing about change and addressing long-standing Māori disparities in health and housing, it occurs to me that we've never been more ready as a nation, and we've never been more strategically integrated as iwi Māori to make a tangible difference among our whānau. And looking back to the turn of last century, this was the goal of the Young Māori Party, and Tā Māui was the first to identify socio-economic factors, particularly substandard housing and unsanitary living conditions, as primary causes of poor Māori health. Yet these disparities have continued to persist for over a century, and in some areas the gaps have widened further. In his reports to Parliament as the Maori Health Officer, Tā Māui lamented the poor state of Māori housing as a result of European influences, which encouraged Māori to live a half-pie kind of Māori European existence, abandoning the more hygienic and healthy practices of the past. Tā Māui's vivid descriptions of the average Māori whare at that time created a picture, in his words, of veritable death traps, riddled with rodents and vermin, where the crowding of these chimneyless and floorless dwellings is in a very great degree responsible for the terrible mortality in young children and the lung complaints, asthma, consumption, and allied troubles of the older ones. He describes the storage of food in wooden cupboards that were redolent of purification, obnoxious, teeming with bacteria, covered with a blooming forest of mould and full of death. What a carnival those germs will have, soon to pluck away some unsuspecting flower of the race, so young, but alas, through ignorance, to go before her 70 years. This is what drove him in his determined and tireless efforts in seeking government support and resourcing to address the Māori housing crisis in his day. But his efforts were either met with political indifference or outright racism. And concerned about the increasing health risk posed by the growing numbers of derelict and unsanitary whare around the country, Tā Māui decided to take the law into his own hands. And as Ruakere alluded to, he employed the use of the fire stick as his main method of eradicating the problem. He was responsible for the destruction of almost 2,000 whare by fire, replacing them with newly built houses made entirely from local resources and labour without a single penny of financial support from the government. I doubt these whare would have met Anaru's standards as healthy and warm homes, but at least they were disease and bacteria free, and that obviously had a huge impact on the turnaround of the Māori population at the turn of last century. So today, I'm sure Tā Māui would be smiling down on us, heartened by the progress made through the landmark housing initiative that we've heard about this morning, Ka Uruora, which promises to provide affordable and healthy homes for our Taranaki iwi. And as we heard heard from Te Waka, in addition to that, it promises to provide intergenerational prosperity. However, thinking about the journey that Tā Maui and his generation of Māori leaders were having to travel at that time and that we're still on, I'm sure that he would also express some caution, given that it's taken almost a century since his passing for the government to finally reach this point of working in partnership with iwi on housing initiatives. Tā Maui identified in his time that nothing short of transformational change would actually resolve long-standing Māori disparities. He was insistent that the kāwanatanga should be held to account for its obligations under Te Tiriti o Waitangi, and its failure to eliminate Māori socioeconomic deprivation in addressing poor health outcomes for Māori. And I believe we must continue to be insistent too. Today, the disparity gaps are continuing to widen in all the wrong places, disenfranchising the Māori citizen from a benefit promised by Te Tiriti o Waitangi. Our socioeconomic demograph can now testify in its own right. Most of us will never own our own home. Some of us will never work. And our children, who are left to raise children, are thrown under the spotlight as examples of poor parenting. The cycle is vicious and produces a regular stream of system victims today whose profiles bear an uncanny resemblance to the issues that faced Tā Maui in his day. Nevertheless, it seems that the calls of Tā Maui a century ago are finally being heeded by this government's plans for the transformational change through the establishment of an autonomous Maori Health Authority, for want of a better word, from the 1st of July. And I want to especially acknowledge the inspirational kōrero today from Riana in updating us on the progress with the rollout of those reforms, and for laying out the vision for a healthier future based on a more holistic approach to Māori health and well-being. This bicultural, at the heart of these reforms is clearly a recognition of the need for Te Tiriti principles and partnerships to be woven throughout the future system, as well as an expectation for a Whānau-centric approach to Māori health. And this is indeed reminiscent, I think, of the system-wide changes sought by Tā Maui and Te Rangihiroa to eliminate institutional racism at the root of Māori health inequalities in their day. And this bicultural partnership approach to delivering health services was an important strategy for Maui and, of course, the Māori reformers of his generation. And we now have the opportunity through these reforms to ensure that the advantages of modern technology and science will equally be available to Māori in ways that will produce better health outcomes. And I believe, as iwi Māori, it's imperative that we get behind and support these reforms to ensure their success, because transformational change can't be achieved by political will alone. And as we've gleaned from a quick glance back over the last century, health reform of this magnitude will require the combination of Māui's broad strategies with medical competence and cultural knowledge, as well as community and personal commitment by each and every one of us to ensure that whānau health and well-being is placed at the centre of our new approach. I'd also add that the opportunity and urgent need for change has probably never been greater, given the global impacts and ongoing uncertainty as a result of the spread of the coronavirus. With strong iwi leadership and more Maori health specialists than ever before, we have never been better positioned to influence and to lead new pathways forward. Our inherently long-term and holistic worldview also positions us well, I believe, to lead social and economic initiatives that put intergenerational and environmental well-being first. So as we re-emerge from the COVID pandemic and attention shifts to the longer-term repercussions and the post-COVID reset, it is critical that Māori are involved in the decision-making more equitably than in the past. In this context, the emergence of the Maori Health Authority at this auspicious time could not have come at a more poignant or serendipitous moment in our history. Indeed, it seems as though we are on the precipice of significant change in this country. The forces appear to be conspiring across all sectors of government to realign the Māori-Crown relationship to one based more firmly on the partnership envisaged by Te Tiriti. And these whakamahara days, which we commemorate through the lens of Tā Māui, have provided regular snapshots of New Zealand society as we have journeyed through a history within which we have barely managed to survive as tangata tūturu Māori. There are very many Indigenous collectives all over the planet that have been lost, failing to sustain the necessity of ongoing and independent existence. And like every other species that occupies this precious space between Ranginui and Papatuanuku, our vulnerability is strangely tangible yet invisible, thus making its warning signs inevitably too late. History has also revealed over time the important decisions that were clearly wrong and exacted an onerous price on subsequent generations. This year, we commemorate as Aotearoa New Zealand the 60th anniversary of political and sovereign independence for Samoa. For New Zealanders, it should be a day of shame. It was in its time an opportunity to consolidate the mana of the Polynesian people throughout and perhaps beyond the Pacific. It was a crossroad at which we should have turned left, but turned right, because we were blinkered by the ambitions of the immense cultures of Europe and Britain. Mai tupu Tā Māui and other Māori parliamentarians saw this with clarity, challenging themselves with the question about the impossibility of supporting the New Zealand government in passing a law to enable the prosecution of Samoan people for refusing to pay taxes on Samoan land. The answer was ironclad. They could not support such an unjust and racist law, and being so emotionally charged with full comprehension of the situation and with a deeply rooted loyalty to their Polynesian kin, the eloquence of their intellectual disgust was drizzled over the House of Parliament. Tā Māui spoke passionately, directing his words to his own government, and in illustrating the position of the Māori representatives in Parliament and leading Māori in the country, he said, "When Tamasese was imprisoned and brought to Auckland for not paying taxes, the Māoris wondered why they, the Māori of New Zealand, were not imprisoned for not paying rates. Our sympathies are with the Samoans, and the whole world can know it. Because if our sympathies were not with them, we would not be Polynesians." He then recited the famous passage on mercy and justice by Portia in Shakespeare's play The Merchant of Venice, and he ended his address in a divided house by saying, "And so we must be careful when we exact our pound of flesh that we do not shed one drop of Samoan blood." We wonder about the nature of today's generations had we as Māori made our decisions about the avarice of the Pākehā. Perhaps the outcome of or made other decisions about the avarice of the Pākehā. Perhaps the outcome of the circumstances which conspire to defeat us today would be more favourable had we insisted as Māori that New Zealand embrace the rising Māori movement in Samoa, which, as we know, was after all inspired by Te Whiti's passive resistance movement at Parihaka. Samoa for Samoans makes sense to the Polynesian ear, and this was a maxim to which Tā Māui was utterly committed as a commentator and leader of his generation. A few years ago, we were blessed to have the Samoan leaders, including the Samoan head of state, attend Te Rā mō Pōmare, and the relationship we knew became adorned with cultural icons before suddenly fading into the background of our mainly urban existence. In effect, it seems to me that we failed to complete the procedure for increasing our momentum for political reform. Consequently, as peoples of the Pacific, we have actually been drifting further apart. I have grown up in a generation in which Māori and Samoan competition for testosterone is so intense that when laced with alcohol could produce terrible violence to ourselves. Thank goodness the new Samoan Prime Minister is female. E huama e te iwi, whakarongo mai ki te tangi, e aue ana i te moana nui. Tare a te wā, ka mōmotu ki tēnā o ngā motu. Kei reira ngā pau here mo te kōrero, e hoki muri ana ki a tātai tonu mo te hunga e angamua ana. There has never been a time in our history, or during the provenance of our settling of the Pacific, that we have needed each other more. Global warming, climate change, and generations of environmental abuse have diminished all of our futures. But logic dictates that we, as iwi Māori, must reignite our fonts of knowledge and practices that were distilled into a rich fabric of intangible cultural heritage. So today, as we reflect on the legacy of Tā Māui Pōmare and reset for an empowered future based on the maturing of our nationhood and identity as treaty partners and New Zealanders, it is important that we position ourselves in a future where the health and well-being of our mokopuna is at the forefront of this nation, is codependent on other social and economic gains, and Māori sharing equally in the benefits of New Zealand's citizenship in our country. But it also requires, in my view, that we do not repeat the poor decisions of the past, so that when the moment comes, we are prepared to stand united, shoulder to shoulder with our Pacific Island cousins, with the same courage, power of conviction and foresight that Tā Māui and the Māori politicians of his day demonstrated at the time of the Māo uprising in Samoa. By standing united in the mana of our common ancestors who traversed the full expanse of Te Moana Nui a Kiwa, we cannot fail. We shall never die. E kore au e ngaro, he kākano I rui a mai rangi a te. Kia ora tātou.
Kia koe Rauri.
Amo te kōrero. Tēnā rawa atu ki a koe miria mea o kōrero. Tēnā ko te tautoko tēnei ki a koutou mea o kupu. Ka nui te mihi. Kāre he mutu ngā mihi ki a koe. E kawea mai, e rā wakaro mo tātou tuakana ke roto. Ngā mautere o Amua me rātu, rarotonga me rātu. Me rātu. Nō reira. kanu I tēnei hiki a koe. Engari kua o te wā, kua pau te wā mo tātou I tēnei aka, I tēnei ahi au. E tika ana me tuku atu ki a koe Jamie, hei whaka kapi tō tātou nei kōrero I tēnei wā. Anō reira, tēnā koe media, tēnā rau atu.
O tēnā koe te tuakana Rauri, ta tuatu rā kia koe kei te tua ine media, waka kanohi nei tō tātou tupuna I tēnei rā o tātou. Nō reira, haku kupu wakamutunga kia koutou, I piri mai, tata mai ki tō tātou wānanga, ki tō tātou rākaranga I te rangi nei, nō reira ka nui rā te aroha kia koutou. Nō reira ka tikina tō tātou karakia, hei waka kapi ake I tēnei kaupapa o tātou. Nō reira kia karakia tātou. Ka tahi a te pō, ka tahi a te marama, ka tahi a te tau, ara ko te tahinga uki tēnei o puanga, ara ko te pua tā iwi o tautoru. E tu e puanga uaina mai rā, tō ware ko te maru au nui kia noho mai rā koe I runga ora rotunga. E tu e matariki huaina tō ware ko te kawarau kia noho mai rā koe I runga I te kawaura. E tu e te ui o matariki, ui ngā kōrero, ui ngā wānanga, ui ngā tāngata. Tēnei uki au e ngā iwi nei, kei te iri mata, kei te wero matātu, ko iwi au, ko rawea, ko autupu, ko auora, ko te ora. Ko kare I mata I pua, ko tāwaki pikia te rangi tuataka e. Kia huai atu, te wai o ara I tiritiri, matairi, mata wero, mata omai, homai, ho mata kia miria. Homai ho mata kia wete kia e, ko puanga, ko wakau rā te wanake nei, ko rire ia, titiro ho koutou mata ki reira, ko rire ia. Ko te marama, ko te rara, ko te wanake nei, ko rire ia, titiro ho koutou mata ki reira, ko rire ia. Homai ho mata kia miria, homai ho mata kia wete kia, homai ho mata kia wakatirohia e, hai. Turuturu o witi waka maua kia tīna, aume ui e,
Tā ki e.
Tēnā rā tata.
Tā ki e.
Rā te pōtonga nā runga pōnaka rā e. E waka maunga tūno te iwi ki reira I te wā e tama. E ngaro tangata nā gara mai. Tēnei ka koke I te wenua ka witi. E pā e ke ka uri tua ia nā iwi marike nā tau nai ora o kiri o te maka tēnā ka riro o I te ropu au e taka I te rangi nei. Tauri mai ho matanga wai e rere I roto Waitara ko te wai tēnā I tuku ai o ai toki Kiri rau e roto matara nui nā kui miri o kia pai atu koe te aere ki raro rā ma o tupuna. Koe po iri mai nau mai e tama. Tata ki konui kia piki atu koe I te rangi tuatai I te rangi tuarua. Kei reira te ora ka ua e tama. I tuku atu koe kia wakatauri a ngā mai o tawiti kia o ki tūmai ki runga ki hoiwi ki roto Waitara ki a koe I te nui a tia Waitara I rua nui.